Welcome to Women Mastering Midlife, where we dive deep into the rich complexities of womanhood in our middle years. I'm your host, Victoria Bird, a pharmacist, certified women's health coach, and your guide on this transformative journey. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, thriving in menopause, or mastering midlife's many transitions, this is your weekly dose of expert guidance, compassionate support, and a judgment-free space to explore it all. Here, we're empowering women to master midlife on their terms, reclaiming our health, our happiness, and our power. Together, we'll rewrite the narrative around this remarkable stage of life, from something to dread into a beautiful, bold transition. I'm so glad you're here. Today on the Women Mastering Midlife podcast, I'm joined with Dr. Christie Smirl, an extraordinary integrative health practitioner who bridges both Eastern and Western medicine. Dr. Christie holds a doctorate in traditional Indian Ayurvedic medicine, is a nurse practitioner with over 30 years of acute care hospital experience, a Master of Science, a university professor of yoga and meditation, a Reiki master, and a published author. Through her work, she brings forward the wisdom of Ayurveda, a system that understands the body through three doshas, or biological forces, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. As women transition into perimenopause and menopause, these forces can shift out of balance, creating symptoms that affect our mind, body, and spirit. Today, we'll focus on Kapha dosha and how balancing it can support cholesterol, weight management, and mental clarity. Dr. Christie's passion is public education. She has generously shared her knowledge through teaching, writing, and her Healthier Vibrations platform. I'm so excited to welcome you today. And it's funny, we were talking for just a few minutes and I was like, wait, stop. This is all really good things we need to have recorded on the podcast. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. As I said, Ayurveda is one of my biggest passions because it made such a big impact in my life.
Well, and before I hit record, we were discussing the fact that you came from a Western medicine background, and in my pharmacy background, I relate to, getting to this point in life where it's like there has to be more than just this. I felt like I was putting a Band-Aid on all these medical conditions with brown paper bags full of medications, and you saw the same, in your emergency medicine career. And so how can you talk a little bit more about what inspired your journey into Ayurveda and how it does complement your medical career?
Absolutely. So, originally when I was a little tiny girl, I was like, I'm going to go into medicine. I want to be a healer. And so I just went directly into Western medicine. And I didn't have any history or preconceived notions about what medicine was. So I just went straight to Cal State San Bernardino, got my RN, got my master's, got my nurse practitioner. And then I had been working at St. Bernardine's Hospital for many, many years. I'd worked there for a total of 30 years. And, eventually I started having patients, whether I was in the work comp department or the wound healing department or the emergency department, and they would say, is this the best I can get? And my first reaction was to say, yes, this is the best you're going to get, minus surgery or something like that. But in the back of my mind, I knew that the answer was I didn't know what else to give them. We study medicine, we study all of these different sciences, but it doesn't mean that we have all the answers yet. And so eventually I decided, I had a couple medical conditions that were a bit mysterious, one in particular. And so at that time I was feeling like at the top of my medical career. I was like, oh, look at me, I'm in the emergency department and I've reached the pinnacle of my education. But yet I had my own chronic health condition that I had no answers for. And so one of my friends, she said, you should go to this Ayurvedic Vaidya, a traditional Ayurvedic doctor. And I was like, okay, let me try that out. I don't know what else he's going to know that I don't know. But at least I was able to put my ego aside and admit, maybe they know something I don't know, like traditional Chinese medicine. Mm-hmm. And so I went in and learned a completely different modality of wellness. And as soon as I was able to cure myself of some mysterious conditions, then I immediately started offering this knowledge to my patients at the hospital in small tidbit bites. You have carpal tunnel and you're pending surgery and you've already been to physical therapy and you've already done steroids and injections, but it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try anti-inflammatory foods, or let's try a breathing technique that will calm the inflammation in the nervous system. And at first, like we were discussing a couple minutes ago, was it woo-woo?
Yeah. Woo
Because
medicine. Yeah.
woo-woo is not really respected. Western
No.
medicine, you say, I'm a nurse practitioner, I'm a pharmacist, I have a doctorate in such and such. But when we start getting into some of the more old school methods, sometimes it's covered with a layer of dust that gets labeled as woo-woo. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore it's not as respected. But the deeper I dug into Ayurvedic medicine, at first I started off, I was just going to take a workshop. And then it was like, oh, I'm going to do a couple months of education, learning. And then they couldn't get rid of me. I was like, I want the doctorate degree. I want to know as much as I can because, as we said earlier, I didn't have the answers for my patients. The answer
Mm-hmm.
was, well, I guess beyond this, it's surgery or permanent disability and long-term pharmaceuticals.
Mm-hmm.
So Ayurveda just completely changed the whole spectrum of health for me.
Yeah, when I was thinking about heading back into the workforce, I was like, gosh, I don't know enough about nutrition and integrative wellness and health options outside of medicine. So I have a a doctorate of pharmacy friend who became a health coach. And I was like, what was your program? She said she went through the Integrative Institute of Nutrition, IIN. And so I looked into it and I started the program, and they do a really broad overview of all different types of health and integrative wellness. And they did touch on Ayurvedic medicine a little bit. It was just like a skimming the surface, but we did talk about Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And so when you reached out to me about coming on the podcast, I was like, oh, I want to dig into this because it's been around for much longer than we have been. And it made sense when I learned the little bit about it that I learned. It really made sense to me. So for listeners who are not really familiar with it, because I'm feeling like most of my listeners probably don't know too much about this, can you give me a quick overview of Ayurveda and the role of the three doshas?
Absolutely. So Ayurvedic medicine understands that every single human body has a unique distribution of what they call the three doshas. And doshas are like biological humors. So for instance, there's Vata, there's Pitta, there's Kapha. And Vata inside the body is the biological force responsible for moving everything. Breathing, sneezing, the heart beating, all the electrical impulses. But if it gets too elevated in the body, then we see too much movement. Anxiety, shaking, tremors, gas and bubbly, burbling, going in the wrong direction. And then we have a second dosha. That's called Pitta. So that biological humor is responsible for all the warmth and heat, the fire, the transformation, making all the hormones develop properly, having nice circulation, having awesome optimized digestion. But if it gets too low, then it's kind of like a soggy, boggy, things aren't working quite right. And if Pitta gets too high, then we have too much heat. So we start seeing things like burning, bleeding ulcers or nasty, cranky, angry attitudes because it can go to the mind channels too. And then the third dosha is Kapha. And Kapha we need for like making strong, lubricated joints and a nice, lubricated digestive system, nice, lubricated nervous system in the myelin sheath. But if we have too little Kapha, then we're kind of like an electrical wire that's been stripped of its insulation. So we start seeing an imbalance and a weakness in the body, weak joints, arthritis. But if Kapha goes too high in the body, usually due to diet and lifestyle, then we start getting thick, sticky, clogged, tumors, cysts, high cholesterol, diabetes, and these types of things. And it can also go to the brain and cause things like unexplained sadness. Somebody will come in and they'll say, I feel so depressed. And I'll say, well, what happened? And they're like, I don't know. I'm just really depressed and crying all the time. I'll say, did you lose somebody? Did something happen? Did an event happen? And they're like, no, I'm just very sad. And I'll say, this is kapha, just biologically invading the mind channels. And then they start exercising, eating a little bit differently, and they're like, I'm not sad anymore. Like, yay! Now you don't need those antidepressants, or maybe they can avoid it. So when we know these three main doshas, there's a whole set of symptoms associated with if vata is out of balance, and a whole set of conditions and symptoms if pitta is out of balance, and the same for kapha. And then there's a whole category of nutrition, lifestyle, breathing techniques, even basic stuff like what time not to eat that can just turn those dials up and down and make all the doshas correct.
Wow, that's fascinating. And it's using lifestyle, like you said, nutrition and lifestyle changes, and it explains it in a way that you can tell, if it's elevated or if it's too low or if you're in balance. And I feel like there's a lot of women out there who we all struggle with balance and being able to find that balance.
We do. And one of the most important things in Ayurveda is to first understand what's my personal body type. What am I prone to? So for instance, my body type is pitta kapha. Before midlife change and menopause, I was very fiery and very hot and very sweaty and very driven and motivated, detail-oriented. And at the same time, that's usually what that body type is prone to accumulating. But I'm also a kapha body type. So pitta and kapha are my main heavy hitters. And so I'm also prone to want to eat a little bit extra and prone to want to, rest a little bit extra. And so by knowing what your natural proclivities are, then you can say, oh, I actually want to go against that. Because Ayurveda also knows that there's very specific levels of imbalance or disease. And we hear people say, oh, I eat intuitively, or, oh, I exercise intuitively. And that's usually wrong. However, if they're in the first stage of imbalance, they will understand what they need to do intuitively. But most of the time in our modern society, we're in like the second, third, fourth level of imbalance. And the actual biological dosha, let's take kapha, for example. If we're kapha aggravated, that dosha will typically drive your mind to feed it more. And so we go completely out of intuitive balance. And so somebody who's already tired and sleepy, maybe high cholesterol, weight gain, feeling soggy and sad in their mind, they won't opt for the healthier things. They'll feed more into the kapha, and then they just fall right off out of balance quicker and quicker. So it's an interesting science that we really have to have the knowledge to say, oh, this is an imbalance. Earlier this year, I put together a workbook so that people can just go down and take their quiz and say, oh, check, 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 check. Whoopsie. Yes, it is imbalanced. And then go the opposite direction. But then again, that requires discipline too.
So before we're going to talk about kapha, but I'm interested in how do you even determine what dosha is your heavy hitter?
There's a whole set of criteria. So in my workbook, I put together like a checkoff list. So let's say, for instance, how do I know if somebody is a vata prakruti, their physical body type, the mental body type? They're going to have more petite joints, a petite frame, maybe bonier prominences naturally. They're usually much more like excited about enthusiastic things and artistic and creative and reaching out influencers, but they also tend to have a bit of a vata digestive system. So maybe their stomach is a little bit more temperamental, a little bit more delicate. And so they'll say like, oh, I've got more gas and bloating typically. And you say, oh, that's a classic vata body structure. They typically have like finer hair, maybe thinner hair. Their eyes are usually a little bit smaller. They have smaller, petite facial structures. So you could just look at somebody and say, like if I look at your body structure, I know for sure you're not kapha because you're delicate and petite in your structures. Whereas like a pitta constitution, you can tell first by looking at their eyes. They're like eagles. Really direct eye contact, really direct speech. And they have like a medium athletic build and medium-sized heads. And if you get them hungry, naturally, they get hangry. They're immediately angry. They're, it's lunchtime, I'm starving. And so they have like really distinct characteristics. They usually like more like competitive sports and passionate things. And don't get them in the sun. They turn cranky in a heartbeat. Don't overheat them. Whereas if we're looking at more of a kapha prakruti, we can go down the whole check-off list and say, oh, larger eyes, larger nose, fuller lips, ooh, big full hair, big bushy full eyebrows, long eyelashes, big broad chest. They're strong. You go on a hike with them, they never stop. They're like an ox. Jeez, you're still going? They have a great immune system, and they're very loving. And they have like warm, luscious voices. Their digestion, they can digest the kitchen sink, so they have all these different checkoff lists that you could go down and say, oh, for sure, your pitta kapha or your vata pitta. And we have all three doshas or we wouldn't be alive. But there's usually one that's like, this is your main dosha, and this is your second complementary, and then the other one you've got some sprinkles of in your physical manifestation, your mental manifestation, and things like digestion and personality.
Okay, I know. I was like, oh, that sounds like me because I'm 5'1" and I have very fine hair and tiny hands and bad digestion.
They even get so detailed as to like, do you have freckles? That's a pitta type of thing. Or do you have cool fingertips? Or do you smell much? Do you sweat much? And so there's like all these specific characteristics. And then we can say, oh, for sure, you're vata pitta. Or nope, you're kapha, etc.
Interesting.
And it helps so much. I tell people, it's like knowing the make and model of your car. If you put the wrong oil in your car, it's going to malfunction. If you put the wrong grade of gasoline in your car, it's going to malfunction. So we have a little owner's manual, and it says, put this grade oil and this type of fuel. Oh, not that kind of tire, this kind of tire. And that's what Ayurveda helped me understand.
Yeah, well, and then thinking back, one of the things that you said that stuck out to me was the fact that when you're out of balance, when you're significantly out of balance, it's hard to intuitively recorrect. And I think that that's something that a lot of people, like even as much training as I have on nutrition and all the things, if I am leaning so far into unhealthy practices, like if I'm like so out of whack, it doesn't matter how much I know, I still won't be making the best choices. And so that's a good point to remember of just kind of trying to stay as much in balance, not imbalance, but in a balance as possible, because it does make it harder to get out of. But when you have the tools and the knowledge to bring yourself back in, that's also important too.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wrote like a simple workbook so people can just go down and say, whoa, I've got 12 points out of balance in kapha. And they can just flip to a different page and say, oh, I'll put this down and I won't. Oh, that's everything I've been eating. Like that's the classic. Let's take a pitta aggravation. People come in, they're hot, they're sweaty, they're cranky, they feel aggressive, they're critical, they have stomach heartburn, all these different things going on. And I'll say, okay, this is where we're going to start. Let's put down the chili, the hot sauce. And they're like, oh, that's all I eat. And I say, I know, I can tell. And they'll say, but that's what I really enjoy. And I'll say, but we have to do the opposite for just a little while and get everything back in check. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So a lot of the women that I talk with, the biggest issues that they do have are around metabolism and weight gain. And so one of the things that I really wanted to focus on was kapha. So because of the weight gain and the possible high cholesterol. I think you also said brain fog is something that can happen when kapha is out of whack. So those are all the things. The weight gain and the brain fog are the two top things that women come to me and say are their biggest complaints in midlife. So what does it mean when kapha becomes imbalanced, especially for women in the menopause transition?
So when we look at kapha, in Ayurveda, we know that it's made of two main components, earth and water. And we know that kapha is heavy, it's covering, it's grounding, it's stable. And when we look at the function of kapha, it's really important for lubricating our chest, lubricating our nerves, lubricating our joints, lubricating the mind, and giving us a sense of groundedness and stability, as well as a sense of contentment in our mind. So what I find a lot of people are under the influence of is a very high-paced, stressed life. And so they'll often look for those kapha type of foods to ground them, to stabilize them. But then it does the opposite. It makes them feel heavy and tired. So kapha by itself is considered cold in potency. It's a cooling agent in the body. It's a nourishing agent in the body. But just as if we put the wrong oil or fuel in our body, we might not utilize it correctly. So just to take you and I for an example, I'm a pitta kapha person, so I can handle and use it differently than in your make and model of body. So when kapha starts becoming aggravated through food, through lifestyle, even through like what time you wake up and what time you eat, when it starts getting aggravated, we usually first start seeing it up in the head, neck, and chest area. So people will wake up in the morning, they're you're like, are you catching a cold? And they're like, no, I don't know why. I've got gunk in my throat. Because kapha is mucousy. It's mucousy. And then people will start, showing symptoms of stuffiness in their nose. They wake up in the morning, they're, blowing their tissue a lot, and they're like, I don't know what's happening. Maybe it's seasonal allergies, or maybe I got dust in my nose, and they don't have an explanation because there's no medical condition happening. It's a early symptom. And then they'll start saying things like, oh, my ears feel stuffy. They'll start trying to pop their ears because it's filling up like a mucus vat. And the ears will start popping and feeling stuffy. Maybe they'll even be diagnosed with an ear infection. But there's no bacteria happening. It's just kapha being aggravated. Then it can get worse and worse. People might complaining of sinusitis, puffy eyes. People sometimes will wake up in the morning, they have a lot of mucus or crust in their eyes. And I'll say, oh, that's kapha. Don't eat kapha at nighttime. There's a lot of different things. Other signs that kapha's possibly out of balance, then they may start coughing. They don't have a bacterial infection. There's no viral infection. They don't have tuberculosis, but now they have this weird chronic cough. And it's usually a little mucousy or a lot mucousy. We see this a lot in little kids. And one of the reasons for that is because between birth and puberty, that's the kapha stage of life.
Oh,
okay. So they're more prone to this coughiness and nice chubby, spongy little babies. But then we also see more influences of kapha. We start feeling puffy and swollen in the hands, maybe swelling in the legs, maybe swelling in the gut, just kind of feeling like, oh, I feel not bloated, but puffy and swollen. And then the kapha can start really showing in the digestive system. Things like slow stools, not quite constipation, but people will start describing like a slow gastric emptying. The peristalsis slows down, and they might eat food, and then hours later, they're like, ugh, like it's just stuck in my stomach. It's not going anywhere. It's slow motion. I call it the Play-Doh belly symptom. Like you eat, and then it's just full of kind of like this thick Play-Doh.
Yeah, it just
And then the
sits.
digestion gets real slow. And then, not to be, foul, but in Ayurveda, we always talk about bowel movements. It just becomes very thick, sticky, and slow to move. And people will say, I had a bowel movement, but it didn't feel complete. But yet they're not constipated, so they don't know what's the problem. Then we start seeing specific conditions associated with kapha. So kapha reliably, when it's been sustained in aggravation, we see all these early symptoms, mid symptoms, but then cholesterol levels start going up. And we can look at, the LDL, the triglycerides, and that's always associated with aggravated kapha in Ayurvedic medicine. Other things that are associated with aggravated kapha, things like truncal obesity, chest obesity. When you start getting a lot of weight gain and it's just in the upper body, like, I don't know why I gained my weight there, because it's probably a kapha body type and kapha aggravation. But then we start seeing other conditions like depression, sadness, people feeling reclusive, like, oh, leave me alone. I just want to lay down and take a nap. I'm so tired. I'm exhausted. And what's interesting is a lot of times when people feel that way, they often go for comfort eating. I'm tired and exhausted. I want tortillas. I want candy, cookies, something to soothe me. And then the disease spirals out of control. But elevated kapha, we also see interesting things like growths, tumors, abnormal growths in the body. For instance, uterine fibroids is almost always a kapha aggravation, because in kapha, they understand the uterus itself is nourished by rasa, plasma, and that's a kapha tissue. So when kapha is consistently high in the body, women will develop these strange growths and fibroids, particularly in the reproductive system. So the list goes on and on about different type of kapha-related symptoms, but those are like the top key ones. But we also see things like diabetes. Because type 2 diabetes, we usually associate it, not always, but it's usually associated with insulin resistance, weight gain, resulting in that insulin resistance. And if we just manage kapha, most of the time we can get rid of it, or at least curb it and get it under control. But with enough discipline, I've had clients who came to me high cholesterol, depression, sadness, indigestion, slow gastric emptying, diabetes, type 2, on medication. And all I did was put them on a kapha protocol. And they were like, I was able to go off all my medication with my family doctor. My hemoglobin A1C is better. My cholesterol is back under check. I'm no longer on Prilosec and different gastric stuff. And sometimes it's as rapid as 6 months.
Are you ready to finally get personalized support for your midlife health without committing to a long program? With my new one-on-one coaching model, you'll start with a single 50-minute deep dive session where we review your full health history, lifestyle, and current concerns. Together, we'll create a plan designed specifically around your hormones, stress, sleep, and nutrition, one that's actually realistic for your life. From there, you can book follow-up sessions whenever you need them to stay on track, get accountability, overcome obstacles, or simply have someone cheering you on along the way. There's no pressure, no long-term contract, and no need to repeat the initial consult. Once you've completed that first session, you're my client for life, and we'll keep in touch in between your sessions. This flexible approach is built for real midlife women who want to experience guidance, science-based strategies, and compassionate support that evolves with them. If you're ready to take the first step, visit womenmasteringmidlife.com to book your free 15-minute discovery call. Let's talk about your goals and map out your next steps toward feeling vibrant, confident, and in control of your health again. So for a kapha protocol, what are some of the foods that people should avoid to kind of bring kapha back down?
When kapha is elevated, first we want to look at how rich is their diet. Because if kapha is mucousy, we want to steer away from things that cause mucus. One of the top lists of foods, flour. Flour in general. People say, what about whole wheat flour? Chickpea flour. Flour is flour. You know when you make gravy and you put, some flour in the water and then it thickens. It's like a thickener and it causes mucus effect in the body. So flour. And then I have to explain that it includes bread, unless it's whole grain sprouted bread, that's a bit different. But bread, tortillas, noodles, pastries, cookies, cakes. So pretty much all flour items, we say you don't have to get rid of them 100%, but the more you get rid of, the quicker you'll reverse the kapha aggravation. Other foods in the kapha aggravating category, things like rice, simple carbohydrates. Fruit is excellent, but in the right quantity. There's specific fruits that are more kapha aggravating than others, like bananas. That's classic. Somebody comes.
I was going to say bananas.
Congestion, stop the bananas. What do we give people classically at the hospital for, like, diarrhea? Brat diet.
Yeah,
bananas,
brat diet.
rice, toast, bananas. And they're like, oh.
Yep.
So we go the opposite. Other things, sugar. Sugar is infamous for aggravating kapha because white sugar is cold in potency. And so when we have too much cold potency foods in the body, then the kapha becomes aggravated. Other classic things, ice water. Not always obvious. People are like, ice water? What's that got to do with the price of beans?
Yeah.
And I'll say, okay, here's your stomach, nice and warm, 100 degrees, maybe 99 degrees. Feed me. I'm nice and ready. I've got all these digestive enzymes. And then you go, hey, have some 32 degrees. Shoop. And then the stomach is stunned. And it causes vasoconstriction. As we know, if you put ice on something, the vessels constrict. And so then we have this full meal in our belly, and we're not properly digesting it because we've shocked the stomach with cold water. So that's one of the big things we get rid of, cold water. Other less obvious kapha aggravating things, gums and guars. Like even if you buy almond milk these days and you look at the back of the container, you're like, oh, gums and guars. And I've had people who are like, I'm kapha aggravated every morning. And I'll just say, look for gums and guars and get rid of those. And then it's gone away because they're thickeners. So it's very like physics common sense when it comes to that.
I was thinking like adding cornstarch into, like when you make a soup and you thicken it up, instead of having like your clear soups and it becomes this like stewy, thick soup. So that's probably something I would avoid.
Exactly. And so if we're having these kapha-related symptoms, we want to stop doing that. Other things that are important is what kind of oil, what kind of fat, and what kind of proteins. So we know in Ayurveda that milk and meat from animals, not plant milk, but animal milk and meat, are the quality that they call guru, heavy. Okay. And they will always either support kapha, but if your kapha is already supported enough, then it will add on to and aggravate kapha. So, a lot of times I'll say, let's just do an experiment. Don't eat meat and milk from an animal for 3 months. And they're like, what? I was like, well, if you really want to get the condition under control, this will help the fastest. And the other thing is what kind of fats? Because a lot of fats we don't really digest well. Different fats like canola oil, that's a real infamous, not well digested fat. And how are they cooking with fats? So we know from nutrition profiles that certain fats are used for high temperature cooking. And certain fats are better for just like drizzle on the salad. And then the question is, are they getting enough fat? ... not a lot? Or are they just drowning their food in fat and then it's not being digested? It's just right up to the face or right up into the brain channels and clogging the channels up. So I say it's kind of like being Goldilocks. You're going to be right in the middle, and a
Yeah.
little bit of trial and error too.
So things like ghee, or is it tallow? Are those heavier things to avoid when your kapha is high?
If the kapha is too high, period, I usually take people off of the bulk of fats. We need enough fats for proper body distribution and health. But there's certain fats that I'll say go off of. Some are less obvious. Things like coconut oil. Coconut is cooling. Whereas
Okay.
ghee stimulates the digestive fire, even though it's from cow's milk. Whereas tallow, it's solid at room temperature, like lard. It's solid. You got to take a spoon. And so we would say stay away from that. Coconut oil in the wintertime is solid at room temperature. So we would say stay away from that too. And we go for the more light oils, more like an avocado oil or a sesame oil, something that is liquid at room temperature as well.
Okay, that's interesting. So what about daily lifestyle practices? Because it's not just what you eat, it's how you move your body and how you live. So what are some lifestyle examples that women, or yes, midlife women specifically, could help incorporate balance of kapha?
One of the quickest things for controlling kapha, to take a look at the timeline schedule of the day. So kapha is most dominant between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. So if we wake up after 6 a.m., we woke up in the kapha stage of the day. And so kapha is naturally going to be a little bit of a heavier influence. So I'll say wake up before 6 a.m. if you're having kapha aggravated symptoms. Other interesting things such as eating time in the evening, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. is kapha time of night. And so we recommend if kapha is already elevated, don't eat during that. Don't eat past 6 p.m., period. You hear a lot of people say to boost your metabolism, don't eat late at night. Ayurveda supports that wholeheartedly. So if we start getting in the cookies and the snacky mode at 10, 9 o'clock at night, kapha is going to go up even more so than normal. If we ate the same foods at 2 in the afternoon, when pitta is nice and strong, versus 8 o'clock at night, it'll have a completely different effect on our biology. So timing is really important. Waking up at the right hour and getting to bed at the right hour and not eating basically past dark. That's one of the first big things that we go over. The second thing is lifestyle as far as stress management. So when our nervous system is on the verge of worry, hypervigilance, even low grade, people say, oh, I'm not that stressed out. I'll say not that stressed out. 0 to 10, what's your daily stress level? They're like a 4. Like that's still stressed out. We kind of accept stress as this normal part of living, but we benefit the more we turn it down. And the reason why in Ayurvedic medicine, when we are stressed, even a 4 out of 10 stress level, it sends an automatic signal to our sympathetic nervous system. And our sympathetic nervous system says, something's wrong. Something's terribly wrong. Even if it's something minor like, I got to get gas before I go to work, but we're worried about it. And when the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, it says, we're ready to fight or flight. Therefore, you don't need to digest. We're not in the parasympathetic rest digest mode. We're in the fight flight mode. Even though it's not like there's something imminent and terrible. We're just in our mind worried. So that shuts down the gut circulation. It actually shunts blood away from the digestive system out into the muscles so that we can, fight or run. And so when we sit down to eat a meal any meal at any time of the day, Ayurveda really emphasizes come back into the present mode. Take like 5 minutes. A lot of times I recommend to different clients do 30 easy breaths. Close your eyes, withdraw your mind from the outer world, and let your sympathetic nervous system kick in before you put food in. Because when we ingest food and we're in that stress mode, it automatically causes maldigestion. And if we're already prone to kapha problems in the stomach, when kapha becomes at its worst, especially when we're stressed, kapha turns into what we call ama. And ama is considered a toxic biological substance in our body. Basically, the food gets digested incorrectly. And so then the body says, I don't even know what to do with this. And then it circulates through our body and starts causing conditions like plaques, weird growths in locations we shouldn't have them, granulations, even plaques inside the brain. And just having the lifestyle of, okay, it's time to eat now. One of the traditional methods that we do, and we do it here at the ashram, is before we eat, we light a candle and we gaze at the candle for a few moments. We cleanse our eyes of the stresses of the world. We light an incense. We clean our sense of smell and we bring ourselves into the present location. And then here what we do is we say some prayers or some gratitude things. I'm grateful for my day. All is well. I'm doing well. My life is all right. A dog's not chasing me at the moment. The building's not collapsed in.
Yes.
And I don't need to be in a state of stress to eat. And that's tremendously important. People who have a real hard time managing that, we give them a specific pranayama, a specific breath technique. And we say, okay, I know your food is ready and getting cold, but sit down for 5 minutes and do this particular breath technique, depending on which one it is, just so that they can remove the stress, flip from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system, and actually digest their food properly. And then, of course, we have a whole bunch of lifestyle things like how much to exercise, what time of the day to exercise, should we be doing heavy weightlifting, should we be doing cardio. Kapha people or kapha aggravated people, both kapha body types and kapha aggravated, they like comfort, they like resting, they like luxury. They need the opposite. They're like, come on, get up, choop, 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 get going. You got to get going. You got to get up first thing in the morning, go for a walk. You got to, get in there and get your discipline in and get your exercise in. And, a kapha aggravated person will be like this. Whew, I lifted the weight. I'm done. That's it for me today. And they need to go out for like the 35-minute walk and really get all the lymph flowing through their body, get the movement, get the digestion moving downward. And a lot of times they need yoga specifically to target their digestion, get that Play-Doh factory kind of wrung out like a stale sponge, and doing things, basic stuff like twists, sun salutations, and really moving the body in every direction so they're not a stale sponge in their gut.
Yeah, I feel like there's this messaging out there to, for the cardio, weighted vests, lifting heavy all the time. And I do feel like we kind of slipped away from Pilates, yoga, functional stretching, and those kind of things. And they can really be important, not just for your body movement, but also for your lifestyle balance.
I absolutely agree with that. I think that, especially talking about midlife, let's say we're a beautiful make and model of a car, but we're a classic vehicle, right? You're not going to go racing that around town, peeling out and get wild with it. You're like, take care of that car, keep it a treasure. And there's a certain amount of wear and tear that really is not necessary on our bodies. going for a basic walk, get a little bit of speed, you move your arms, go for a walk, climb up on stuff, go upside down, do the Pilates, keep the alignment proper, keep the strength and balance proper. And I think that, I don't want to call it extreme sports, but sometimes it really is too much. It's just too much. And we need to know, where's our balance? Are we getting out for walks? Are we lifting some weights? And it doesn't need to be CrossFit, trying to throw up, 200 pounds, because that's going to lead to wear and tear and injury. And then where are we? Now we have a torn rotator cuff and a blown out ACL in our knee, and then a slip disc in the back. And we just didn't need that much.
Yeah. Yeah. As somebody who's had disc issues in the past, I understand. It's time to slow down a little bit. So if we're going to take a step back and kind of have the broader picture, because I think if anybody's like me, they're starting to think of the other doshas and what does that mean in midlife. And so Vata can remind, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but Vata would be connected with like the anxiety and insomnia that some women experience.
Yes. What's really interesting about Vata is as soon as you hit menopause, you're in the Vata stage of life. And that's why we tend to see in later stages of life, in the fall and the winter of our life, we see things associated with Vata aggravation like bone thinning, osteopenia, osteoporosis. People will say, I've always slept great, but now I'm, maybe 60 years old and I have insomnia, and I've never had that before. Now my hair is dry and falling out, and now my bowels feel dry, because Vata is space and air, and it's related to dryness. So when we start seeing Vata get out of control, we see things like racing around, racing with time, things like anxiety for no apparent reason. No apparent reason. I'll say, how come you feel anxious? What's on your mind? And they're like, I don't even know. The grocery list is just nonsense. And they feel like their heart is racing because that's movement related. And then sometimes they start feeling this unusual sense of urgency about everything. They're like a hummingbird. You're like, what are you doing? Why are you moving so fast? What's the rush? And they're like, I don't know. And then a lot of times it's just Vata. And so, simple things with Vata too, especially when we go into the Vata stage of life, things like cold raw salads will aggravate Vata because Vata is cold and dry. Things like eating dry granola will aggravate Vata. And you're like, but I thought I was doing really healthy. I'm eating salads and, healthy, low fat or light type of foods. And so Vata definitely can become a big problem, especially when we're looking at midlife changes. So
interesting. Yeah. Well, and then because then you have hot flashes.
Yeah.
So.
When Pitta is aggravated, especially when a woman's health is starting to move into that menopause stage, we're going from the Pitta stage of life, which is puberty, to menopause. And it's almost like it's last hurrah. And so the heat starts building. We are metabolizing things differently. So if there's been an accumulation of Pitta in the Pitta stage of life during menopause, which in an ideal situation should be asymptomatic. It should just be like a second blooming rather than, oh no, it's menopause, I'm going to fall apart. But when Pitta starts climbing, as those changes happen, then we start seeing things like aggression. Oh no, she's menopausal, better leave her alone.
Menor rage.
Menor rage. And it's Pitta going to the mind channels. And then we start seeing strange things like, oh, now I have acid reflux. I'm like, acid reflux? You've never had acid reflux. That's Pitta kicking in. Or suddenly they start getting these unexplained skin rashes and skin inflammations that they've never had before. Or you'll start seeing things like waking up every night at 2 or 3 o'clock in the evening, in the middle of the night, hot, sweating, thirsty, like you're in the Sahara Desert. And you're like, what is this about now? And other things is like systemic inflammation. So feeling like the joints are inflamed, the spine is inflamed, getting diagnosed with inflammatory diseases that are kind of unexplainable, because we know that inflammation is the base of a lot of different health conditions.
Yeah.
And so, I hear people say all the time, oh no, once you hit 50, you're going downhill. But in Ayurveda, that's not supposed to be the case. In 50s, 40s, 60s, we're supposed to be walking into this blooming of our wisdom, knowing our body, knowing our minds, and being able to say, ha, I've got it figured out, rather than, oh no, I'm falling apart. And I do find that our modern society sometimes has a tendency to emphasize that with age, things get worse. That's a falsity. That's called, we're not putting the right grade of fuel in our car. We're not putting the right lubrication on the car. For instance, one of the best lifestyle practices in Ayurveda is to cleanse the body and lubricate the body properly. So we do things like oil pulling to pull the toxins away from the brain channels, and then we spit the oil out. That pulls the congestion and toxicity out of the ear area, out of the eye area, out of the sinus area, out of the throat, and then allows proper lymph drainage through the body. One of the other special things that we try to do very regularly is body oiling. They call it abhyanga. And so we take an appropriate oil, it could be sesame, not cooking sesame, but raw organic sesame, or coconut oil, and to massage all of the joints and all of the tissues, even down to the bottoms of the feet, even in the hair, so that we're not getting dried, cracked, kind of like the Tin Man or the Tin Woman. And when we do that, we keep the tissues healthier, and we are able to absorb transcutaneously, not into the circulation, not into the gut. We're not going to gain weight, but into the transcutaneous tissues for tissue health. That's really important as we age. Like my bathroom always looks like a kitchen. There's all these oils and measuring cups and warmers and things like that. But it really, really helps the anti-aging effect, and it makes us more lustrous and also less susceptible to the outside world, less susceptible to the weather changes, less susceptible to the cold, to the dryness, and things along those nature.
So like when my grandma would tell me she knew the weather because her knee hurt, like she knew a storm was coming because her knees would bother her.
That's truth. That's absolute truth.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think there's this push of it. It's a miserable experience. Like going through menopause is this horrific. It's all downhill. Just cash it in. You're done. And also just the idea of aging, especially in women, being so terrible, and that everything in youth and beauty, or youth is beauty, and this seems like such a beautiful way to look at the transition in a way that it can be managed without having to have drastic things happen, and in keeping life calm and in balance is not exactly a bad thing.
It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing, and as we go into our wisdom years, as I like to call them, our wisdom years, we're able to look at ourselves and say, is that margarita really going to serve me? Is that strange lifestyle behavior really going to serve me? Or are those things that really are no longer holding a place in my life anymore and in my health well-being? And when we look at this whole aging and beauty and youth, I tell people I look forward to the privilege of getting old,
Mm-hmm.
the privilege of having wrinkles, the privilege of turning gray, and the privilege of gaining wisdom and knowledge and sharing it forward. Because we all have different seasons. Like we were talking at the university the other day, and I'm a professor of yoga and Ayurveda at one of the local universities. And we were talking about like an avocado tree
Mm-hmm.
and how an avocado tree takes years to bear fruit. That you cherish the avocado tree even more so in its later stages as it's been around for years and years, because now it's producing all this fruit. And yes, beauty is wonderful. And having beautiful skin is wonderful. And having a beautiful body is wonderful. And Ayurveda promotes that. But at what point are we just looking at the blooming, flowering tree across the street and wishing we were that, when actually we're bearing some other priceless gift?
Mm-hmm.
And to know where we stand. Are we a daffodil in the spring? Are we a rose in the summer? Are we an avocado tree? And to find value in aging. I've done a lot of work in hospice. I've even worked like the morgue, convalescent homes. And I would walk in and I was like, I have the honor and the privilege to grow old. And I look forward to it. And I don't need to try to look and feel 20 anymore. I want to look and feel the best at this age, which has its own unique beauty. And so why not embrace it rather than holding ourselves to some artificial money cranking system
Oh, yeah.
that wants to profit off of people's fears and insecurities? I look at one of my family members, she's 80 years old now, and I'm like, I want to grow to be 80 years old. She's got beautiful all white hair. And, some of her joints hurt and things like that, but she's so beautiful in the wisdom that she can bring. Whereas when I was 20 and just radiant, I didn't have that wisdom. I had something else. And so I think it's real important in Ayurveda just to understand there's beautiful blooming in each stage of life and to embrace it and to see it as an honor to even get that far in life. And then to take care of our bodies, to take care of our minds, and to slow down, to not have to be rushing around and in that sympathetic nervous system all the time and worried about everything.
Oh, yeah. The minute I recognized the necessity of putting down the hustle, so many more things became better.
Yeah.
We just need to do that. And I'm pro-aging. I'm not anti-aging. I'm pro-aging. Like, can we stop saying anti-aging everything?
I'm pro-aging for sure.
Right? Yeah. So for anybody out there who this is resonating with them, there are women who are, they're very much in line with, I want to do hormone therapy and do all the things, but this sounds interesting and something I could add in. Or there's a lot of women that I work with that really aren't interested in hormone therapy or the other traditional Western medicine routes to manage the symptoms of midlife transitioning. What can they do? How can they find you? And you said something about a workbook, but tell me all about that. So if they're interested in digging in, where do they go?
Well, first I wanted to address one thing. I'm not anti-Western medicine either. Mm-hmm. I believe that hormones play a role. They have a time, they have a place, they have a duration and a frequency that really help us not feel like lunatics in the transition.
Yes.
If people want to find my information, earlier this year, so I published this particular book. It's Ayurveda Yoga Wisdom. I have a couple other books. One is on the chakra system, and each of them are workbooks. So on Amazon, if you just type in my name, Christie Smirl, my books will pop up on Amazon. And they're put there so that we have home remedies and self-help. I do private consults, education pieces. So if people want to contact me, I do mentorship, and I'll say, okay, tell me your set of issues or concerns or goals, and then I'll help steer them. I'll say, okay, that's a kapha problem, or that's a pitta problem, or that's a lifestyle issue, and then help steer them in the right direction to find their own solutions that last long term. My website is healthiervibrations.com. And on that, I have a lot of free education as well. This book, Ayurveda Yoga Wisdom, I recorded an entire audiobook. So there's a whole bunch of YouTube videos. I'm on YouTube. You could just type in Healthier Vibrations or Christie Smirl. And then you can go through and say, hey, there's the Prakruti quiz. I want to know what my Prakruti is. Or, ooh, there's the Vikruti quiz to find out which dosha is actually out of balance. And then you can find on there the kapha lifestyle video that says, don't drink the cold water, don't wake up at 10 a.m. in the morning, don't eat late at night. And it has all of the book spelt out because I'm pro-education and trying to give people the tools that they can just use automatically. Now, people who are really interested in diving deep, I also do education. I offer yoga teacher training. So I'm a RYT 500 and I train and certify yoga teachers, but melded with Ayurvedic lifestyles, even down to like Ayurvedic cooking. So I have those types of classes available. Some of them are on Zoom and it's a group class, but some people also just do private classes. And I have a specialty course that I offer. It's a 50-hour certification program just for people in healthcare. Let's say somebody's already a PA or a DO or even
a pharmacist,
a pharmacist, a physical therapist, even people like estheticians. They'll say, I really want to be able to offer true comprehensive information. And so I put together a 50-hour program for them. And they learn, how to figure out a Vikruti, what's their body type, what's out of balance, what dosha does what to the skin, what dosha does what to the digestive system, what groups of food aggravates which dosha, which exercises help, which breath works help. And so it's a real comprehensive program. But other than
fascinated. It's like,
I love
that
doing
sounds
education.
fascinating. Yeah. And I think it's so, when you break it down, because the terms and it can seem kind of intimidating to somebody who's never heard all the terms that you're using. But when you break it down, it's really, I don't want to say self-explanatory. It's complicated. It's not complicated. It's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
And so when you're saying these things, I'm like, oh, all these little light bulbs are going off in my brain. If people are listening on the podcast, they're not going to see the light bulbs, but I can feel them in my brain. Like, this is really fascinating.
And for me at first, when I heard about Ayurvedic medicine, I was like, it sounds a little bit wonky to me.
Yeah.
First of all, it's another language. Like in regular Western medicine, we refer to a lot of things in Latin terms. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Ayurveda, there's a lot of Sanskrit terms. But if we can get past the Sanskrit terms, it's suddenly the fundamentals and the physics, it just makes so much sense. And it took me a little while to get past the, Western medicine, I know this, and then realize, oh, I don't know this. And once I was able to understand just the basic physics of the Ayurvedic medical system, it just applies for life. Mm-hmm. 2 + 2 is always 4. Kapha plus kapha is always more kapha.
Yeah.
And so it made it really easy to live my life in a way that you could look at a food type and say, that's a kapha food. Oh, that's a pitta food. Oh, that's a vata type of food. And then just put your formulas together properly, naturally with enough protein and fat and carbohydrates and exercise and all of that. But it's a beautiful science.
It sounds beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing it with me. This is the first time we've gotten into it, and I feel like it's just scratching the surface. But since we're already at an hour, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's other questions I could ask, but that might just have to be for another time. But Thank you so much for joining me today. This was a fantastic conversation. I love learning things that are outside of the scope of anything I've ever heard before. And this was definitely one that really piqued my interest. So thank you for coming on and sharing it with me and everyone who's listening. I will make sure to have all of your links to your YouTube and your website and the books in the show notes for anybody who wants to have a look at those too.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Women Mastering Midlife. If something you heard today resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend who might need a little extra support on her midlife journey. Remember, small changes can make a big difference, and you don't have to navigate this transition alone. We will be back next week with more expert guidance and compassionate conversations to help empower you to master midlife on your terms. Until then, you can find us on Instagram at Women Mastering Midlife, or come connect with me directly at Miss Victoria Bird. And you're looking for deeper connection and support, be sure to join us in the Women Mastering Midlife community. We'd love to continue the conversation with you there. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review this podcast. It helps us reach more amazing women mastering midlife just like you. You'll find all the links from today's episode and ways to connect in the show notes below. See you next time.